I am here to talk about leadership. That's what they asked me to talk about. And I looked up kind of standard definition. Leadership is the art of motivating a group of people to act toward achieving a common objective. Seems very straightforward, and I think it's important to point out. It says it's an art. I'm an engineer, so engineers aren't typically in the art mind frame. We think very linearly and we think very straight and scientifically. And so motivating people to do something as a group really is not a scientific method. There definitely is an art to it, the persuasion and the motivation that goes into it. So I'm going to talk to you about my experience and how I got to where I am. So yeah, here we go. This is me when I was in college. I grew up in Little Rock, Arkansas, and moved here to go to Christian Brothers University. I wanted to study engineering. I actually wanted to study environmental engineering, and not a lot of schools offer that as a program separate from the civil program. So CBU had a good civil program, and here I came. I didn't really know what I was getting into going into engineering, but I wanted to do something focused on math that wasn't a sort of standard math job. I did not want to be an accountant. I didn't want to be a banker. And when somebody suggested engineering to me, it seemed like a good fit. I've always loved the environment and I've loved the earth and thought that it would be a way to put these things that I was interested in together to have a career. So I went to CBU, graduated in 99. That's right before I was graduating. That's my dad came over from Little Rock to be with me at one of the engineering dinners. And when I graduated, I moved back to Little Rock and went to work at a firm called White Daters. And I did general civil development work. And then did that for 4 years until I got my professional engineer's degree and moved back to Memphis and worked at a firm called the Pickering Firm. And I did general civil there as well. In about 2010, I took some time off. My grandma was sick, and I took a big leap of faith that if I took a year off from engineering, I would be able to come back to it. And when I came back, I switched from doing general civil to environmental, which was my original passion, why I got into engineering in the first place. And I've been at Tioga since 2011. Um, about a year after I got there, I became part owner and vice president. And then about a year ago at January of 2020, I became president and principal owner of the firm. Besides my leadership roles in the engineering world, I also have had different roles like in my church and in different societies associated with being an engineer or with doing development work. I was involved in the Commercial Real Estate Women, American Society of Civil Engineers, Engineer and Water Resource Institute. Katie mentioned some of those. But I wanted to point out it's not just at work. You can be a leader in a lot of different places, and we'll talk about that in a little bit. So here I am exhibiting leadership. A lot of people will tell you the best way to be a leader is to lead from the front, get out and do the same thing your staff is doing. I don't always agree with that 100%, but sometimes it's important. So providing an example to everybody of what we should be doing, and that's what I'm doing in this photo. Part of what we do as environmental consultants is go to industrial facilities, and when it's raining, the the rain falls down on the ground, runs across the ground, and picks up whatever potential pollutants are on the ground. And so every industrial manufacturer in the state has to do certain amount of sampling of that water. And as you can imagine, it only rains so often. And so we have to get those samples when it's raining. And it means all hands on deck. Everybody has to go out and do it. And um, so that's me out in the rain at a chain link fence manufacturer in my safety vest, about to pull some stormwater samples. I think if you want people to follow you as a leader, it is important to get in the game with them and provide that example. For me, what eats up most of my time, though, is actually organizing the team objectives, getting making the decisions about, as a company, where are we going to go, what are we going to do, what is important today, what is important this week, and then also looking kind of big picture, what is important in a year and in 2 years from now, where are we trying to get to and how are we going to get there. The people that work for me that are doing the individual assessment work and going out and doing things, very detail oriented for projects, can't think in that big picture way. And so when we're deciding, is this building big enough for us? Do we need more vehicles? Things like that. Stepping back and organizing the objectives is important. And then keeping track of the actions, all of the things from very small, did we send this file to our client, all the way to, did we actually decide if we're going to move into a bigger building or not? Keeping track of that is almost my whole day. I just have lists of lists of lists, and keeping up with who's doing what and how it's coming along. And making decisions, of course. If you're going to be a leader, you have to make a decision. Small things, big things. People come to you to ask how, I've hit this roadblock. How do I move forward? And then once you've made those decisions, you really have to stand behind it. You have to be unafraid to put your neck out, is what I put in this slide. But really what that means is, I am the face now of Tioga. And when we say something is the way it is, and we tell our clients and we stand behind it, then I have to be ready to answer them. Why is it that way? Sometimes we have to give our clients bad news. You want to buy this property. Well, it really turns out it used to have these underground storage tanks. There is potentially some contamination there. Instead of just moving forward, what we really need to do is do this additional sampling. It's going to cost this much money. That is not what they want to hear. And people sometimes will want to persuade you to say something different, change your opinion. You really have to be able to stand by what you said, stick to your guns, and not be afraid of hurting people's feelings by doing your job. Being honest, I think that's super important as a leader. I think it's easy to see how being honest with your clients is important, but it's also important to be honest with the people that are working for us. I think people want to understand, why don't we get an extra day off? Why are we going to do this work that we said we changed our mind. We said we were only going to do it this way. Now we're going to do it this way. Everybody wants to be in the loop on what's happening. So I think honesty plays a big part in keeping everybody focused on the same goal. Remember the beginning, what we said our definition of leadership is getting everybody moving towards this same objective. I need you all to understand what that objective is. I have to tell you truthfully what it is so that you feel excited to go do it. Some things that you might not think about for what leadership is. This is my partner, Maggie. She's the founder of Tioga. There's Maggie and me standing in her office talking. And Maggie founded the company in 2009 and stepped back last year because of some personal family things. And now she's the vice president and I'm the president, and we work together constantly. I feel so lucky that I have a partner like Maggie, because not all the pressure is on me. We lead things together. But in this picture, she's talking and I'm not, I'm listening. And that is such an important part of leadership. I have to hear not only what Maggie is telling me, but what all the people who work for me are telling me. I have to understand what's going on with them in order to keep the whole boat moving in the right direction. It's as important for me to be able to express myself as for me to be able to listen and hear what they're saying, and then responding to those needs. Um, we've had so much back and forth over the past week with all the snow being here. Nobody could go into the office. And so, how do we deal with that? Who needs to take vacation? Who needs to take administrative time? Who can actually keep working? Um, we were talking before this started about the boil water that's happening right now. Um, we're trying to help our staff that don't have water at their houses right now get water from our office. We're responding to them in business ways, but also in personal ways. When they have issues that are happening, I have to be listening and responding as a good leader. And then I think another very important thing that people maybe don't think about is admitting when you've made a mistake. Nobody is perfect, of course. And in a professional setting, we often want to act like we're perfect. We're infallible engineers. We know what we're doing. This is the way, this is the only way. But there are often mistakes that happen. Whether it's, an example I can think of recently is that a client asked us to do like 3 steps in a process. And we've done this same thing for many other clients. With our other clients, we've only done step 1 and step 2. And so the person who did the work on our team just overlooked step 3 altogether. We finished the work, we sent it to him, we sent him a bill, and about a month later, he called and said, "What happened to step 3?" So I had to ask the guy who did it. Then I had to come back to the owner and just say, "I'm sorry, we just flat overlooked it. We just didn't see it. We'll do it. We'll get it done as fast as we can and get it to you." And typically, the good thing is when you're honest and admit mistakes like that, everybody wants to work with you. Everybody is okay with it. But when you try to cover things up, um, it doesn't usually go very well. So
It
different
sure
ways
as
we
wrong.
ways we can lead, not just at work. That's primarily what I'm talking about because that's my personal experience. I have the most leadership happening in my office setting, but at school, um, all of you can be leaders in your individual schools, with your friends, with the different clubs and societies that you're involved in at your church. I have parenting on here. I know obviously none of your parents, but it's funny to me how much of my time parenting is like leading the people at my office. They need the same guidance, reassurance, encouragement, honesty, all the things I think that make me a good leader in my office, make me a good leader at my house. And I added social media on here. Obviously, I'm much older than all of you and use social media differently, but I think it's a huge way that we're all interacting with each other right now. And I think that we can be leaders in that world by choosing the content that we put on there, focusing on things that are positive and being a leader in drawing people to the things that are beneficial on social media as opposed to things that are negative. So, how does it start? This is little Larkin. This is when I was 10 years old, just, oblivious to what was going on in the rest of the world, happy to have my little mullet and crooked teeth and like just smart and silly and not really caring what was going on with everybody else. I just was my natural self still. And then came junior high and middle school. I know everybody calls it middle school now. Um, I really sort of lost who I was when I was in middle school. At the school that I went to, it was pretty small. There were probably 30 kids in my eighth and, well, seventh and eighth grade classes. Um, there weren't very many girls. And the emphasis was really on, for girls, being shy, being quiet, not answering in class, keeping your hand down. I had never been any of those things. I had always been very outspoken, very smart. I wanted to answer the teacher, I wanted to be involved with the classwork. Um, but all of a sudden, I hit middle school and I wanted to do what all the popular kids were doing, and I wanted the boys to like me. And I started kind of hiding that part of myself. I started trying to be quieter. I started not answering the teacher unless, forced to. I really tried to hide who I was a little bit. And luckily, I got to high school and it was a much bigger school and it was a very different experience. When I got to high school, the emphasis from the school itself was really on academic success, preparing you for college, getting you involved in different activities, different clubs, different societies, so that you could build up your resume to get into a good college. And it was exciting because I started finding more people who were like me because there were just more people in general. And I started figuring out things that I was interested in, things that I wanted to spend my time in, and feeling stronger about stepping out and saying what I like. I do like math. Yeah. I don't care if it's nerdy. That's something that is good for me. Um, and then in college, I had a little bit of a rebound. In college was a whole different situation. I went to Christian Brothers, which is a much smaller school. So kind of back to my middle school experience where um, there were probably less than 30 people in the civil engineering program my year, and three were female. Thankfully, now, because of programs like this that Dr. Ivy puts together, many people are working to encourage women to get involved in engineering. And I think the numbers are more balanced now. But I spent all my time in college with men and not women. And it was sort of confusing. It was like, what am I going to be like when I get out of school? And I'm just stuck with all of these fellas all the time who don't always want to listen to what I'm saying, even though I'm the smartest person in this room. It was obvious to me, but they didn't always care. So I kind of had a wobbly trajectory at the beginning when I was in school. And then I got out of college. And as I explained in that very first slide, I was talking about my career path. My first job, I worked in Little Rock, Arkansas at a small firm, probably 10 people that worked physically in the office. And I was the only female there except for the secretary. And I was the only female who had ever worked there except for the secretary. So that was an eye opening experience. It was very much an old boys club, if you know what that means. They would be telling a joke and then say, "Oh, wait, is Larkin in the room? I should stop." And so I felt a little bit like the odd man out. And I really just used that time. Technically, it was a great job. So I used that time to learn my profession, learn the skills I needed to be a really good engineer, learn how to interact with clients because they were good at that. Um, and then I moved on. And my second job, because I had the technical skills to do it, I started out as a project manager. So I was leading projects, I was leading engineers, I was managing, interactions with staff and clients. And that's when I really started to figure out who I was going to be as an engineer and how I could fit into a leadership role. I started to find my own voice. I started to, at my first job, I really dressed like the men in the office dressed. And I know that sounds like a silly thing to be focused on, but I just didn't know who I was. I wore, khaki pants and little like collared shirts, and the things that I wore to that job, it was like as soon as I got home, I took them off and never wore them around my friends. It was like those are work only outfits. And in my second job, just coming of age was part of it, but also having the responsibility and being given the ability to do some leadership tasks. I started feeling more like myself. I started wearing clothes that I liked. I wore high heels sometimes, I started finding my voice in the middle of this larger company. And then now, since I've been at Tioga, it's sort of come full circle. I'm back doing environmental work. I'm very confident in myself. I'm confident in the work that I do. And I know how to get things done. At this point, we've grown the company from a staff of 5 to 13. And half of those report directly to me, half report to Maggie, my partner. Um, but they all come to me with questions about how to do things. What about this? Oh, I found this, roadblock. What do we do about that? And I've finally come to realize, like, yeah, I'm the old guy in the room now. I'm the person who knows how to do this stuff. I'm the leader who can answer the questions. I know at my second job, where I was just first starting to do project management, there was a time where I was really uncomfortable. And I talked to my dad about it, and he said, there's a transition that happens for everyone, not just for engineers, where the first few years of your career, you're really working under someone else's wing and they're kind of giving their blessing to everything that you're doing. And then at the end of your career, the heaviest part of your career, the largest amount of time, you're responsible for yourself. And you say, yes, this will work. And everybody in the room says, oh, it's going to work because Larkin said it would work. And the time where you're transitioning between those two is uncomfortable. It just is. You're not quite ready to be on your own, but somebody's putting you out there saying that you can do it. And so that was my real learning curve. So getting there, that's the hard part. How do you get from that, shy, trying to not be a smart kid in middle school, pretending to be someone you're not, to the, leader of whether it's a company or a division within your group or a university or whatever society you want to be involved in, soccer team. For me, I'm sure there's lots of other aspects to this, but I can only speak about my own personal experience. I think the important part is figuring out who you are. What are you good at? What do you like to wear? What do you like to do? What is it that's interesting to you? Um, it's really important to believe in what you're doing if you're going to try to lead people to do that. And, we talked about honesty as an important piece of being a leader. Um, you have to really feel compelled for what you're trying to lead people to do. You have to be honest with what you're telling them to get people to do something. So for me, it really was important to get back to environmental. The civil design work that I did was really exciting. I learned a lot. I had so many really amazing experiences and enriching opportunities, but my heart was not in building giant commercial structures and industrial footprints. But I do really care about what we're doing in the environmental world. And so the combination of, growing up a little bit to figure out who I am and how I want to present myself and what I feel confident saying, and also getting involved in a company where I really like what we're doing has helped me become the leader that I am now. I think you have to really develop a strong character because, as I said earlier, you have to be prepared to give the hard answers, whether it's to somebody who you're leading, someone who you're trying to, organize within your, it's not always a company, but within your structure. Sometimes you have to say no. It's just like with parenting, we can't always say yes. We can't always take the easy way out. We have to be strong enough to do what's right for the big picture of everybody that's involved. So, day to day, what does this mean? Um, Listening to my business partners, I mentioned that earlier, but day to day, I spend a lot of time encouraging them, critiquing them, giving them tasks to do, working not just with my partners, but with all of our staff, trying to develop high quality work. And because all I know is my way, training our staff to talk to clients, juggle projects, organize things in the way that I have been successful in the past. But ultimately, as the head of the company, I review everybody's work. So I spend a lot of time reading other people's reports, checking numbers, redlining things, giving things back to people. I'll read people's emails before they, not everyone, but somebody, staffer John might want me to read a message he's put together to tell a client some bad news. So I read it, I help him edit it, we craft it to where he feels more comfortable sending it. Um, that's kind of a normal what my day consists of in a normal year. But I put this photo on here to show you this is me now. Ever since this is actually a year ago, that was my setup when I first got home. Now I have a much better dual monitor with my laptop on a docking station. I have much more paperwork and stuff in the way now. Um, but COVID has really changed our day-to-day operations as a company, and it really required a lot of leadership to get through it. Initially, we there's 13 of us, and we have a building downtown in North Maine where we operate. And when we first, excuse me, when we first realized coronavirus was coming to Memphis, we decided as owners that we would do a split duty approach. We had, um, like for instance, we have two scientists who can do wetland delineations. So one would come in Monday, Wednesday, Friday, the other would come in on Tuesday, Thursday, and the other, and they would work from home on the other days. And we split all our disciplines that way with the thought that if one person got sick, we would not decimate a whole area. We would still have one lead-based paint, one asbestos person, one wetland person, however we could cover it. But that only lasted like 2 weeks. And then all of a sudden we had the stay at home order from the mayor. And then we made more decisions about how to get everybody safely home and how to set up. We weren't set up with laptops. We prefer desktop computers. So how do we get everybody set up at their house? And how do we get everybody connected? Who doesn't have good internet? Who has problems with their children in the home? Who has this? Who has that? As the leader of the company, we're worried about the business and the business itself carrying on, but we're also worried about all these people as individuals. And so I don't know how many times, I sent a text saying, if you need food, we'll bring it to you. If you have to quarantine, we'll do this for you. Let us know about this. Helped people find a place to go get tested. it, it being the leader of the company in unusual times means that you're doing lots of unusual tasks. It doesn't just stop when the projects are finished and you're checking them off of your list. But speaking of that, the culture of our company is really cool. And creating that culture is one of the best parts about getting to be a leader in a company. Culture is a real buzzword around businesses over the past, I don't know, 5 or 10 years. It basically means what it feels like when you are at your workplace. You know, does it feel quiet and serious and professional? Does it feel wacky like a pizza place? Like how does it feel when when you're there, when you're working? Um, and it's been very important. I told you Maggie was the founder, and she's had the outlook from the very beginning of starting this company that she wanted to work at a place that balances business life with personal life. And that's really how we ended up being partners, because I knew I was going to have kids and I knew that was going to be really important to me too. So we have a culture where we say, yeah, in normal times, your child has a play at 2 o'clock on a Thursday. Sure, of course you need to leave work and go to that. Your dishwasher is leaking on the floor. Of course you need to go home and deal with that. Um, Many of us had, before coronavirus, now with virtual life, I'm working more. I'm sitting at my desk in my dining room all the time. But when I physically went to the office, my schedule was 7:30 to 2:30 because I picked up my kids from school every day. And then I made up an hour or two once I got home and things were settled down. We created a work life that would work around, that would fit with our personal life. And that's the important piece of our culture that we built. And it's neat because the longer you do it, the longer you lead a group of people, you start to see it's really just the things that we, Maggie and I, as partners, what we value is becoming the values of our company. The things that are important to us are important to all of us as a team. We prioritized our values and vision statement included safety, teamwork, honesty, consistency, passion, service and quality, and employees. And this picture is our staff that was on hand when we celebrated our 10-year anniversary. That was our crew. A couple of the faces have changed from then till now, but that's about the size we are, and that's about the makeup that we are. Even as a woman owner of a company, Maggie and I are still the two females in the business, and the rest are males. We actually now, I should correct myself. That's how it had been. This year, it's been very wild. Even being in the virtual world, we have hired several new people, and we now have 3 staff, um, young engineers, all of them that are female. So we're changing. We're getting a slightly different face on the company. But some of what we do is very field heavy, going out and taking samples and tromping through mud, and it just doesn't appeal to everyone. And I mean, it's not every day, but some days we're out dealing with wastewater, and some days we're out dealing with rain, and it's a very interesting and exciting field. It's different than standard civil engineering, but I love it. The negatives, being a leader in your organization, I am responsible for my people. I talked about this just a little bit earlier. It's a good thing that I feel responsible for them, but it's hard. I worry about their well being. When the first person called and said, my dad, I'm sorry, it's kind of making me feel emotional. It's surprising me. The first of our people that called and said, my dad's really sick. We think maybe he has COVID. Um, it scared my pants off. It scared all of us. And we all feel so connected. It's hard to then put that down and walk away from it. When you hang up the phone, I don't stop thinking about those people that work for me. Even though I haven't been around him, I haven't been around his dad, there's no way it's going to personally affect me, but it does personally affect me because I care about them. Um, and then, more from a business perspective, what happens when you're the leader is that you pick up on the project work when somebody else can't do it. If we have a deadline, let's say, John, we don't have a John, so I keep using that name. John has 5 deadlines and he doesn't tell me till the last minute. He can't get them all met at the same time. So all of a sudden, I'm doing his assessment for him because my name's not on the company, but my face is, the face of the company, and I'm not going to let something fall through the cracks. So sometimes I'm working at night when maybe nobody else is. So it's kind of hard to step away from it. And it's hard to step away from being a leader once you get really comfortable in the role. So I find myself wanting to be the leader when I'm here at my house with my kids and my husband, when I'm in organizations like American Society of Civil Engineers that Katie mentioned. When you're used to kind of organizing and keeping everybody moving forward, when you have to take a backseat role, sometimes it can be difficult. It's hard to stop yourself from wanting to take control and push things in the direction that you think it should be pushed in. I have a friend who's an engineer at the Corps of Engineer, and her husband and she have developed a code. When she's taking over his things, he says, I don't need you to manage my project. And that's like, okay, back off, got it. I can't stop myself sometimes. And so it can be a lot, the weight of the people in your company depending on you. But for me, it's worth it. But I just didn't want to be untrue and leave that part out. So this is almost the end. What can we do now? So I wasn't really sure if you guys would be high school, middle school, elementary school. Um, but no matter what, there's ways we can start trying to become a better leader now in our own lives. So I think the most important thing is find out what you're interested in and dive in and like really feel strong about the things that make up who you are. I think it's really important to figure that out, or at least dabble around. I was into so many things when I was younger. I tried guitar and gymnastics and art, um, and that's cool too. I mean, just having those experiences help you figure out what makes you you. I don't think you can have a strong voice as a leader unless you know who you are. Um, I think that you can start putting yourself out there as a leader already, just with your friends, school projects, with your brothers and sisters. I think a lot of times with school projects, I can remember sitting around with like 4 other kids, and nobody wants to be the one to say, okay, I'll present it, or yes, I'll organize it all. You do this, you do that, you do that. That's a great way to just test out leadership on a really small scale, with people that you're already working with. You're already going to be talking to them. Just take the initiative and see what it feels like. And I think another good thing to do is just practice. I know for myself, I took a leadership role in, same thing I said it a million times, ASCE, and I was really nervous when I said I would be the secretary. I didn't think anything of it. But then when I realized every month I was going to stand in front of the group of engineers and talk and introduce people and, sort of extemporaneously speak, it made me nervous. But after you've done it a couple of times, it's easy. It's just like everything else. The more you practice it, the easier it becomes. And so if you're thinking of, running for president of your student body, but you're really scared to do it, start with, like I said, maybe take the leadership role in your church group or in your school project that you're working on, because every little experience you have is going to build on that and make it easier the next time. It all just works together in forming who you are and making you feel really strong to say what you think and stand behind it and encourage other people to follow your example. I hope I didn't forget to say anything. That's everything that I prepared.